review car. Peter Christensen here, coming to you from the CEO's desk. Going to talk about a few updated forms, and I guess some new forms in a way. We're going to break this up into a couple videos and talk about just the latest release of revisions and updates from the UAR Forms Committee. Okay, first one I want to talk about is the Unrepresented Buyer Disclosure form. So a great tool, not necessarily required, but a great tool when approaching an unrepresented buyer. And, it happens from time to time. Buyer wants to go to loan, and that's fine. But there's always the worry of, well, they're going to be asking me some questions as a listing agent. I don't want to go too far. I don't want to confuse them about which party I represent, and I don't want to do my seller a disservice. And so, first thing we know is that the listing agent represents the seller. And in an unrepresented buyer scenario, they don't represent the buyer at all in any capacity. So they have a duty to treat all parties honestly, for sure, but they're going to act in the seller's best interest, right? That's their job. Their fiduciary duties are to their client, the seller. And so they are going to answer questions in ways, behave in ways that are best for their client, the seller. And we always want that to be clear to an unrepresented buyer, that they know that. So we have this unrepresented buyer disclosure. And it's, again, a good tool to provide for an unrepresented buyer. So you just give it to them and let them know. And so some of the things that were added, so we do now have kind of a safe haven law that was put on the books in Utah, that safe harbor, I guess, is the term we use. And so it lays out what you can do as a really there's language for both. If you're representing a seller and an unrepresented buyer comes your way, or you're representing a buyer working with an unrepresented seller, and basically lays out a few things you can do, like still talk to them, negotiate, but we want to make it abundantly clear to the unrepresented party that you don't represent them. So this form helps do that. So you give this to them. It outlines there you only represent the seller in that transaction, and has language in there saying buyer acknowledges and agrees that the actions of the seller's agent are for the benefit of the seller. So it's just reiterating that. And that the actions of the listing agent should not be seen as creating agency with the buyer. And cites the code section saying that they can contact the buyer directly and discuss items related to the sale, that they can provide the buyer, unrepresented buyer, with any blank forms, and can negotiate the terms of the transaction directly with the buyer when they aren't represented. And then, but reiterates again, buyer's agent has a fiduciary duty, listing agent has a fiduciary duty to the seller. And if they were to get a buyer's agent, the buyer's agent would have a fiduciary duty to the buyer. So it kind of lays out like the roles of the agents, even though there isn't a buyer's agent, saying it's an option. And then gives a little brief thing about limited agency. This is interesting language here. So it says that acknowledgement and waiver, the buyer voluntarily waives any cause of action against the seller's agent and the company that claims that the seller's agent and company are representing the buyer or buyer's interest. And they hold the listing agent and the company, the brokerage, harmless from liability coming out of a claim of an agency relationship between the buyer and the listing agent. So again, just laying it out, I don't represent you. You're waiving any claim against me that I do represent you, because I'm making it very clear that anytime we are dealing together, I'm doing it on behalf of the seller. So, I mean, this is all pre-existing stuff, but the form has just been beefed up with that new code change that added that safe harbor language when dealing with an unrepresented buyer. So I recommend using this form. Check it out, look it over. It's a good one to walk through and help everybody understand. That's what we want, is just clarity in the transaction and no misunderstandings. Remember, this is not legal advice. If you need specific legal advice, please contact your attorney. This is legal information only. Thanks for tuning in.